The stagecoach rattled to a stop in Red Cloud, Nebraska, and Victoria Jenkins clutched her worn carpetbag tighter, knowing that everything she owned in this world could fit inside it with room to spare. Through the dusty window, she could see a lone figure standing beside the general store, hat pulled low against the afternoon sun of July 1882. And her heart hammered with the terrible uncertainty of whether this man, this stranger who had answered her letter, would take one look at her threadbare dress and hollow cheeks and send her right back east. The driver opened the door and offered his calloused hand. Victoria stepped down onto the hard, packed dirt, her legs unsteady after 3 days of travel from St. Louis. The town stretched along a single main street, wooden buildings bleached pale by the relentless prairie sun. Horses stood tied to hitching posts, their tails swishing at flies. A few curious faces peered from doorways and windows, watching the newcomer with undisguised interest. The man by the general store straightened and walked toward her. He was tall, lean in the way of men who worked from sunrise to sunset, with sun-weathered skin and eyes the color of creek water in summer. His clothes were clean but patched, his boots worn down at the heels. When he removed his hat, his dark hair was pressed flat with sweat. "Miss Jenkins." His voice was rough but not unkind. "Yes, Mr. Irving, Austin Irving, welcome to Red Cloud." He looked at her carpetbag, then back at her face. His expression revealed nothing. "Is that all you brought?" Victoria felt heat rise to her cheeks. "I am afraid so." "The letter said to bring only what I could carry. I came with very little." She lifted her chin, trying to summon dignity she did not feel. "But I came with hope. I hope that will be enough." Something shifted in Austin's eyes. The hard line of his mouth softened. He settled his hat back on his head and picked up her bag. "Hope is all we need, Miss Jenkins. Everything else we can build together if you are willing to try." The knot in Victoria's chest loosened just slightly. "I am willing." "Then let us get you something to eat. You look about ready to blow away in the wind." He gestured toward a small restaurant across the street. "We can talk there, get to know each other a bit before we see the preacher." Victoria's stomach clenched at the mention of food. She had eaten nothing since yesterday morning, rationing the last of her bread to make it last. But she was also aware of how little money Austin must have to be advertising for a mail-order bride in the first place. "I do not wish to be an expense. You are to be my wife, not an expense." Austin's tone was firm. "Come on." The restaurant was small and spare, just 6 tables covered with checkered oilcloth. A woman with steel-gray hair and sharp eyes brought them coffee and beef stew without being asked. Victoria tried to eat slowly, to maintain some semblance of manners, but the food was hot and hearty, and her body ached with hunger. Austin ate steadily across from her, giving her time. When she finally set down her spoon, he spoke. "My place is about 5 miles north of town. 40 acres, mostly pasture. I run cattle, about 30 head right now. The house is small, just 2 rooms, but it is solid. Roof does not leak. I built it myself 3 years ago when I homesteaded the land." He turned his coffee cup in his hands. "I will be honest with you, Miss Jenkins. It is a hard life. The winters are brutal. Summer is hot and dry. Some years the grasshoppers take everything. I work from dawn until dark most days. I do not have much to offer except hard work and a roof over your head." "That is more than I have now," Victoria said quietly. "I have been working in a textile mill since I was 14. When the mill closed last month, I had nowhere to go. No family, no prospects. I saw your advertisement and I thought it might be a chance for something different, something better. Even if it is hard, at least it would be my own life, not someone else's." Austin studied her for a long moment. "How old are you?" 22. "I am 27. He set down his cup. I should tell you why I placed that advertisement. I had a fiancée back in Ohio. We were planning to marry and come west together. But 2 months before the wedding, she changed her mind, said she could not bear the thought of leaving civilization behind, so I came out here alone. He met Victoria's eyes. I am not looking for someone to replace her. I am looking for a partner. Someone who wants this life, rough as it is. Can you see yourself being happy here? Victoria looked out the window at the wide stretch of prairie beyond the town, grass rippling in the wind like waves on an ocean. It was nothing like the cramped, smoke-filled city she had left behind. I think I could be happy anywhere I was wanted, anywhere I belonged. Then we will make you belong here. Austin stood and left coins on the table. The preacher lives just down the street. Unless you want more time to think about it. Victoria rose as well. Her hands were trembling, but her voice was steady. No, I have thought about little else for 3 weeks. If you are certain you want me, I am ready. The wedding took place in the preacher's parlor with his wife and the doctor as witnesses. It lasted perhaps 10 minutes. Victoria's hand shook so badly that Austin had to steady it to slide the simple gold band onto her finger. His own hand was calloused and warm. When the preacher pronounced them man and wife, Austin leaned down and pressed a chaste kiss to her forehead. "Welcome to the family, Victoria Irving," he said, and she felt tears prick her eyes at the sound of her new name. They left town in a wagon pulled by 2 sturdy horses. Victoria sat on the buckboard beside her new husband, her carpetbag at her feet, watching the landscape unfold. The prairie stretched endlessly in all directions, broken only by occasional stands of cottonwood trees along creek beds. The sky was impossibly vast, a dome of brilliant blue that seemed to go on forever. "It is beautiful," she said, surprising herself. "I never imagined it would be so open." "Wait until you see a storm roll in. You can watch it coming for miles." Austin kept his eyes on the horses. "Gets lonely sometimes, though. Nearest neighbor is 2 miles south. You will not have much company except for me and the cattle. I am used to being alone in a crowd of people. This will be different. Better, I think." The house appeared on the horizon after about an hour of driving, a small structure of sod and wood with a stone chimney. It sat at the base of a gentle rise with a creek running perhaps 50 yards to the east. A small barn stood nearby, along with a chicken coop and a corral where several horses lifted their heads to watch the wagon approach. Austin helped Victoria down and retrieved her bag. It is not much to look at, but it is home. Inside, the house was surprisingly tidy. The main room served as kitchen, dining area, and parlor, with a cook stove, a rough-hewn table, 2 chairs, and a rocking chair near the fireplace. Shelves held dishes, books, and supplies. A doorway led to a smaller room that contained a bed covered with a star-pattern quilt. "My mother made that before she died," Austin said, seeing where Victoria's gaze had landed. "It is one of the few things I brought from Ohio." He set her bag down. "I will sleep out here on the floor tonight. I know we are married legal, but I figured you might want time to get used to things before we share a bed properly." Victoria felt gratitude wash over her. "Thank you. That is very kind. I will go tend the horses and check on the cattle. There is coffee on the stove and some bread in the cupboard if you are hungry. Make yourself at home. Look around all you want. This is your house now, too." He paused at the door. "Victoria, I am glad you came. I know we are strangers, but I will do my best by you. I promise you that." After he left, Victoria stood in the center of the small house and let herself breathe. She was married. She lived in Nebraska now. She had a home, humble as it was, and a husband who seemed decent and honest. It was more than she had dared hope for when she had answered that advertisement 3 weeks ago. She explored the house slowly, taking inventory. The supplies were sparse but adequate. The dishes were mismatched but clean. Everything spoke of a man living alone, doing his best to make do. She found a broom in the corner and began to sweep, needing something to do with her hands. Then she checked the water bucket and found it nearly empty, so she took it and walked down to the creek. The water ran clear over smooth stones. Victoria filled the bucket and stood for a moment, listening to the sound of the wind in the grass and the distant lowing of cattle. A hawk circled overhead, riding the thermals. The sun was beginning its descent toward the horizon, painting the clouds gold and pink. When she returned to the house, Austin was in the barn. She could hear him talking to the horses in a low, soothing voice. She set the water bucket by the stove and began preparing supper from the supplies she found. There was salt pork, beans, and flour. She could make biscuits and fry the pork, soak the beans for tomorrow. By the time Austin came in, the smell of cooking filled the house. He stopped in the doorway, surprise clear on his face. "You did not have to do all this. I wanted to. You said we are partners. Partners help each other." Victoria turned the pork in the pan. "Besides, I needed to learn where everything is kept." They ate as the last light faded from the sky. Austin lit a lantern, and they talked quietly across the table. He told her about the cattle, about his plans to expand the herd next year if the market stayed good. She told him about the mill, about the endless hours of standing at the looms, the deafening noise, the lint that filled your lungs until you coughed every night. "I do not miss it," she said. "Not for a moment. You might miss it come January when the wind is howling and the snow is piled to the eaves," Austin said, but he was smiling slightly. "Then I will remind myself that at least I can breathe clean air, even if it is cold." That night, Victoria lay in the bed under the star quilt and listened to Austin settle onto the floor in the main room. She felt strange and uncertain, her body aching from travel, her mind whirling with all the changes. But beneath the strangeness was a small, warm feeling of possibility. Austin Irving was a good man. She could sense it in the way he spoke, the way he moved, the care he took with his animals and his land. Perhaps, in time, they could build something real together. Perhaps hope truly was enough to start with. The days fell into a rhythm. Victoria rose at dawn and made breakfast while Austin tended the animals. After they ate, he went out to work on the fence line or check the water sources or move the cattle to fresh pasture, and she tackled the endless chores of keeping a household running. She washed clothes in the creek, pounded rugs, weeded the struggling vegetable garden Austin had planted near the house. She learned to milk the cow, to gather eggs from the bad-tempered hens, to churn butter in the wooden churn she found in the barn. Austin was patient with her ignorance, teaching her without condescension. He showed her how to tell when the cattle were stressed, how to read the weather in the clouds, how to conserve water when the creek ran low in late summer. She absorbed it all, determined to prove herself useful. In the evenings, they sat together at the table or on the small porch Austin had built facing west. They talked about their days, about their pasts, slowly learning each other. Austin spoke of growing up on a farm in Ohio, of losing his parents to influenza when he was 23, of his restless desire to see what lay beyond the settled lands. Victoria told him about the orphanage where she had spent her early childhood, about the mill where she had worked for 8 years, about the few friends she had made and lost. "You ever regret it?" Austin asked one evening as they watched the sunset paint the sky crimson. "Coming out here to marry a stranger," Victoria considered the question carefully. "I regret nothing that brings me to a better place. Are you sorry you sent for me?" "No." His answer was immediate and firm. "I thought it might feel strange having you here, like you did not fit. But it feels right. Like the house was incomplete before and now it is whole. He glanced at her, then away. Is that a foolish thing to say? No, I understand what you mean. I feel it too, a little. Like this is where I was supposed to end up all along. She paused. Austin, how much longer do you want to wait before we truly become husband and wife? His head turned sharply toward her. In the fading light, his eyes were dark and intent. I did not want to rush you. I know you did not have much choice in any of this. I wanted you to be sure. I am sure enough. We are married. I would like us to be married in every way. Victoria felt her cheeks warm but held his gaze. Unless you do not want to, I want to. His voice was rough. God knows I want to. You are my wife, Victoria. I have wanted you since that first night, but I was trying to be honorable about it. Then stop being quite so honorable. She stood and held out her hand. Come to bed, husband. They learned each other in the darkness of the bedroom, careful at first, then with growing confidence and passion. Austin was gentle and patient, mindful of her inexperience, and Victoria gave herself over to the newness of it all, the intimacy of skin against skin, breath mingling with breath. When it was over, she lay in his arms and felt, for the first time since childhood, completely safe. I am glad I married you, she whispered against his chest. His arms tightened around her. I am glad you answered my letter. I am glad you took that chance. From that night on, they shared the bed, and the small house felt truly like a home. The summer deepened into August, hot and dry. Victoria tended the garden, fighting a daily battle against the rabbits and the drought. Austin worked on building a new section of corral and culling the cattle, selecting which ones to take to market in the fall. One afternoon, Victoria was hanging laundry when she saw a rider approaching from the south. She shaded her eyes, watching the figure resolve into a young man on a paint horse. He waved as he drew near, and she waved back cautiously. Hello there. The rider pulled up near the house. He was perhaps 19 or 20, with a sunburned face and an easy smile. You must be the bride everyone in town has been talking about. I am Samuel Carter. My father has the place 2 miles south. Victoria Irving, pleased to meet you. She dried her hands on her apron. Would you like some water? It is a hot day for riding. I would be grateful, thank you. Samuel dismounted and led his horse to the water trough. My mother sent me over with an invitation. She wants you and Austin to come to dinner Sunday after church. She figured you might like to meet some of the other families around here. Victoria felt a flutter of nervousness. That is very kind of her. I will speak with Austin, but I am sure we would be happy to come. Good. Ma will be pleased. She has been wanting to meet you something fierce. Samuel grinned. The whole county is curious about Austin's mail-order bride. You are quite the topic of conversation. I imagine so. Victoria handed him a dipper of water from the bucket. There cannot be much else to talk about out here. You would be surprised. Plenty of gossip to go around, even in the middle of nowhere. He drank deeply, then handed the dipper back. Austin is a good man. Keeps to himself mostly, but he has helped my father more than once when we needed it. You did well marrying him. Thank you, I believe so too. Samuel remounted and touched his hat brim. I will tell Ma to expect you Sunday. Service starts at 10 in the schoolhouse. After he rode away, Victoria went back to hanging the laundry, but her mind was working. She had only one dress besides the threadbare one she had arrived in, and it was hardly suitable for church and a social dinner. She would need to make something new and quickly. There was fabric stored in a trunk in the barn that Austin had mentioned, left over from some long-ago project. Perhaps she could use that. That evening she asked Austin about it. Samuel Carter came by today with an invitation for dinner Sunday, but I do not have anything appropriate to wear. Do you think I could use some of that fabric in the barn? Austin looked troubled. That was material I bought for Emily, my former fiancée. She was going to make curtains and such for the house. I suppose I should have gotten rid of it, but I never got around to it. I do not mind using it if you do not mind me having it. I promise not to be offended. It is just fabric and it should be put to use. Victoria kept her tone practical. Otherwise, I will have to wear my work dress and I would rather not make a poor impression on the neighbors. Use whatever you need. You are right. It should not go to waste. He reached across the table and took her hand. You do not need to worry about impressing anyone, though. You are exactly what you should be. But Victoria did worry. She spent the next 3 days cutting and sewing in every spare moment, fashioning a dress of deep blue cotton with a simple pattern but careful stitching. She took apart one of her old dresses to use for the lining and salvaged the buttons. When she tried it on Saturday evening, it fit well enough, though it hung looser than it should. She was still too thin from her months of near starvation in St. Louis. Sunday morning, they hitched the wagon and drove into Red Cloud. The church service was held in the schoolhouse, as Samuel had said, with folding chairs set up in rows and a simple wooden lectern at the front. About 30 people were gathered, and all of them turned to stare when Victoria and Austin entered. The preacher who had married them greeted them warmly and introduced Victoria to a succession of faces and names that blurred together. There were the Carters, Samuel's large family with a tired-looking mother and a stern father. The Holloways, who ran the general store. The Mitchells, who had a farm east of town. Young couples with babies, older couples with grown children, a few single men who eyed Victoria with undisguised curiosity, until Austin put his arm around her waist in a clear gesture of possession. After the service, they followed the Carters back to their homestead. The Carter house was larger than Austin's, built of milled lumber with glass windows and a covered porch. Inside, it was crammed with furniture and people. Samuel had 5 siblings, ranging from a girl of about 16 down to a boy of 7, and they all seemed to talk at once. Mrs. Carter shooed everyone outside to eat at the long table set up under a cottonwood tree. The meal was substantial: fried chicken and potatoes and 3 kinds of pie. Victoria sat between Austin and Samuel's younger sister, Ruth, who peppered her with questions. What is it like in St. Louis? Is it really as big as they say? Why did you become a mail-order bride? Are not you scared to live way out here with no neighbors close by? Ruth, let the poor woman eat, Mrs. Carter scolded, but she was smiling. Though I confess, I am curious about some of those things myself. Victoria answered as best she could, trying to be honest without revealing too much of her desperation. She spoke of the city, of the crowds and noise and dirt, of the factories and tenements. She spoke of wanting a different life, a quieter one. She did not speak of the hunger, of the fear, of the nights she had slept in doorways because she could not afford even a shared bed in a boarding house. Well, you have come to the right place if you want quiet, Mr. Carter said, his stern face softening slightly. Not much happens out here except the weather and the work. That suits me fine, Victoria said. After the meal, the women gathered to clean up while the men talked about cattle prices and water rights. Victoria helped wash dishes alongside Mrs. Carter and Ruth, listening to their easy chatter about people she did not know and events she had not witnessed. It felt strange to be included, but also pleasant. You seem to be settling in well, Mrs. Carter said, handing Victoria a wet plate to dry. Austin looks happier than I have seen him in a long time. I hope so. He has been very kind to me. He is a good man, quiet but steady. You could have done much worse. Mrs. Carter lowered her voice. If you ever need anything, woman to woman, you come see me. I know what it is like to be new out here, to feel like you do not quite belong yet. It gets easier, I promise. Thank you. That means a great deal. On the drive home, Austin was relaxed and talkative, pointing out landmarks and telling her stories about the people they had met. Victoria leaned against his shoulder, content to listen and watch the prairie roll by. "They liked you," Austin said as they turned onto the track leading to their house. "I could tell you fit in just fine. I was worried I would say something wrong or not know the right way to behave. You were perfect. You are always perfect." He glanced down at her and smiled, a rare, full smile that transformed his usually serious face. "I am a lucky man, Victoria Irving." "We are both lucky," she said. "We found each other across all those miles. That is something special." That night, lying together in the darkness, Austin said, "I love you." The words were quiet, almost hesitant, as if he was not sure how she would receive them. Victoria's heart swelled. She turned to face him, cupping his cheek with her hand. "I love you too. I think I have been falling in love with you since that first day when you said hope was all we needed. You gave me that hope, Austin. You gave me a reason to believe things could be good again." He kissed her then, deep and slow, and they made love with a tenderness that brought tears to her eyes. Afterwards, she lay in his arms and felt the last of her fears dissolve. She belonged here. She belonged with him. This was her life now, and it was good. The seasons turned. September brought cooler nights and the hard work of harvest. Victoria helped Austin prepare to take his cattle to market, and when he returned a week later, he brought supplies and a bolt of good fabric in a soft green that made her eyes shine. "For you," he said, looking almost shy. "I thought you could make something nice for yourself. Maybe a dress for Christmas or just for every day. Whatever you want." She kissed him in thanks, overwhelmed by the thoughtfulness of the gift. It was more than the fabric itself. It was the fact that he had thought of her, had wanted to give her something pretty, had spent money they could barely afford on something impractical and lovely. October brought the first frost. Victoria spent days preserving what little the garden had yielded, putting up beans and tomatoes and squash for the winter. She made soap and candles, darned socks, sewed a new shirt for Austin. He repaired the barn roof and shored up the chicken coop against the coming cold, cut and stacked firewood until the pile reached taller than his head. They fell into bed exhausted every night, but always found time to hold each other, to talk, to make love. Victoria had never imagined that marriage could be like this, equal parts work and companionship and affection. She had thought it would be an arrangement, a transaction, but it had become so much more. In November, she realized her monthly bleeding had not come. She waited a week, then two, before she said anything to Austin. "I think I might be with child," she told him one evening as they sat by the fire. He went very still. "Are you certain?" "Not completely, but I am usually regular as clockwork, and I have been feeling strange in the mornings." "Queasy." She looked at him, trying to read his expression. "Are you pleased?" "Pleased." He crossed to her and pulled her into his arms. "Victoria, I am overjoyed. A baby, our baby." He pulled back to look at her face. "Are you pleased? I know it will make everything harder for you." "I am thrilled. I have always wanted children. I just did not think it would happen so quickly. We have been married 4 months. These things do not take long when two people are enthusiastic about the process." He was grinning, an expression of pure joy that made him look years younger. Victoria laughed, feeling lighter than air. "I suppose not. Oh, Austin, we are going to be parents." "We are." He kissed her forehead, then her lips. "I will take care of you, both of you, I promise." Winter came hard and early that year. By mid-December, the snow lay 2 feet deep across the prairie, and the temperature dropped so low that water froze solid in the bucket overnight. Austin had built a rope line from the house to the barn so they could find their way in blizzards. Some days the wind blew so hard, and the snow fell so thick that visibility was reduced to inches. Victoria's pregnancy progressed through the worst of the cold. The queasiness faded, replaced by a ravenous appetite and a growing roundness to her belly. She sewed tiny clothes from scraps of fabric, knitted caps and booties, daydreamed about the baby while Austin was out doing the necessary work of keeping the animals alive. On days when the weather was too brutal for him to go far, they stayed inside together, playing cards, reading aloud from Austin's small collection of books, making plans for the future. They would need to add a room to the house, Austin said. The baby should have its own space. And maybe next year they could afford to buy more cattle, expand the herd, make enough profit to hire help during the busiest seasons. "I want to give you a better life than this," Austin said one night, staring into the fire. "I want you to have a real house with proper floors and more than 2 rooms. I want you to have nice things, pretty dresses, maybe even a piano like my mother had." "I have everything I need," Victoria said, her hand resting on her swelling stomach. "I have you and this baby and a home. That is more than I ever dreamed of having. You deserve more. You deserve everything. Then we will work for it together. But I am already happy, Austin. You have made me so happy." Christmas was quiet, just the two of them, but Victoria made it special. She used some of the precious sugar to make cookies, hung evergreen boughs over the doorways, fashioned a small tree from a cedar branch Austin cut, and set it on the table. They exchanged simple gifts. She gave him a muffler she had knitted from unraveled yarn. He gave her a wooden box he had made, carved with a pattern of stars to match the quilt, perfect for storing her sewing things. "It is beautiful," she said, running her fingers over the smooth wood. "You made this. I used to do woodwork with my father when I was young. I am not as skilled as he was, but I remember the basics." He looked pleased by her reaction. "I wanted you to have something that would last, something you could pass down to the baby someday." She kissed him, tasting cookie crumbs on his lips. "I will treasure it always." The new year of 1883 arrived with no fanfare, just more cold and snow and wind. Victoria's belly grew larger. By February, she could no longer see her feet, and simple tasks like putting on her boots required Austin's help. He was endlessly patient, helping her dress, bringing her water when she woke thirsty in the night, rubbing her aching back. "I feel enormous," she complained one morning, trying to button a dress that no longer fit properly. "Like a cow." "You look beautiful. You are carrying our child." "That is the most beautiful thing in the world." Austin came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her, his hands resting on the swell of her belly. "I love you, Victoria, more every day." The baby kicked, a strong thump against his palm. Austin's face lit with wonder. "Did you feel that?" "I feel it all the time. The baby is very active. I think we will have our hands full with this one." "Good. A child should have spirit." March brought the first hints of spring, though the snow still lay deep in the shadowed places. Victoria's time was drawing near. Mrs. Carter had agreed to attend the birth, and Austin rode over to inform her that it could be any day now. "She said to send Samuel for her the moment your pains start," Austin reported when he returned. "And she gave me a list of things to have ready: clean cloths, hot water, strong thread." He looked nervous. "I wish there was a doctor closer. Women have been having babies without doctors for thousands of years. We will be fine." Victoria tried to sound more confident than she felt. The truth was, she was terrified. She had seen women in the tenements suffer through long, agonizing labors, had heard the screams, had known more than one who did not survive the ordeal. But she could not afford to be afraid. The baby was coming whether she was ready or not. The pain started late one afternoon while Victoria was kneading bread. She felt a sharp cramp low in her belly, then a strange sensation like something releasing. Water flooded down her legs, soaking her dress. "Austin," she called, trying to keep the panic from her voice. "It is time." He came running from the barn and took one look at her face before springing into action. Within minutes, he had helped her into a clean nightdress and into bed, then saddled a horse and rode hard for the Carter place. Victoria lay in the bed and breathed through the contractions, counting the seconds between them like Mrs. Carter had told her to do. Austin returned with both Mrs. Carter and Ruth within the hour. Mrs. Carter took charge immediately, shooing Austin out of the bedroom and setting Ruth to boiling water and tearing cloth into strips. "How far apart are the pains?" she asked, feeling Victoria's belly with expert hands. "Maybe 10 minutes," Victoria gasped as another contraction hit. "Good. Still early then. First babies take their time. This is going to be a long night, dear." It was. The pains grew stronger and closer together as the hours passed. Victoria labored through the night, walking when she could, resting when she must, enduring the increasing agony of her body forcing the baby down and out. Mrs. Carter stayed at her side, offering encouragement and cool cloths for her face, while Ruth brought water and held her hand. From the main room, Victoria could hear Austin pacing, his boots a steady rhythm on the floor. Once, between contractions, she heard Ruth's voice. "She is doing fine, Austin. Stop wearing a hole in the floor and have some coffee." Dawn was breaking when Mrs. Carter said, "All right, dear, the baby is coming. Next time the pain comes, you push as hard as you can." Victoria bore down with all her strength, feeling like she was being torn in two. She pushed and pushed, beyond exhaustion, beyond pain, operating on pure instinct and determination. Then suddenly, there was a release and a wail filled the room. "A boy," Mrs. Carter announced, holding up the squalling infant. "A healthy baby boy. Oh, Victoria, he is perfect." Victoria collapsed back against the pillows, tears streaming down her face. A boy. They had a son. Mrs. Carter cleaned the baby and wrapped him in a blanket before placing him in Victoria's arms. He was tiny and red-faced and furious about his sudden eviction into the cold world. Victoria stared down at him in awe. He had a shock of dark hair and his father's long fingers. He was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. "Austin," Mrs. Carter called, "come meet your son." Austin burst into the room, his face pale and anxious. When he saw Victoria holding the baby, his expression transformed. He crossed to the bed in 2 strides and knelt beside it, staring at the infant with naked wonder. "A son," he whispered. "We have a son. We do." Victoria lifted the baby slightly. "Would you like to hold him?" Austin took the baby with exaggerated care, as if he were made of glass. The infant stopped crying and blinked up at his father with unfocused eyes. Austin laughed, a sound of pure, unfiltered joy. "Hello, little one, I am your father. Welcome to the world, Mrs. Carter bustled around, cleaning up, helping Victoria into a fresh nightdress, instructing her on how to nurse the baby. Ruth changed the bedding and brought soup. By the time they left that afternoon, Victoria was settled in bed with the baby sleeping in a cradle Austin had made weeks ago, exhausted but happier than she had ever been in her life. "What should we name him?" Austin asked, sitting on the edge of the bed and watching the baby sleep. "I thought perhaps Adam after your father and James for a middle name after mine." "Adam James Irving." Austin tested the name. "I like it. It is a strong name." "For a strong boy." Victoria reached for Austin's hand. "We did it. We made a family. You did it. You brought him into the world." "You are amazing, Victoria." He leaned down and kissed her gently. "I love you. I love him. I love our life together. I never thought I could be this happy." "Neither did I." When I got on that stagecoach in St. Louis, I was so frightened. I had no idea what I was coming to. But I trusted hope, and hope brought me to you." She smiled despite her exhaustion. Hope was enough after all. The baby grew quickly, as healthy babies do. Adam was a good-natured child, quick to smile, slow to fuss. Victoria spent her days nursing him, changing him, marveling at every new expression that crossed his tiny face. Austin was besotted, spending every free moment holding his son, talking to him in a gentle voice Victoria had never heard him use before. Spring came fully, melting the last of the snow and turning the prairie green. Austin plowed and planted the garden, expanded it to twice its former size now that they had another mouth to feed, eventually. Victoria strapped Adam to her chest in a sling she had sewn and worked alongside him when she could, weeding and watering, protecting the tender plants from rabbits and deer. The Carters came to visit, bringing gifts for the baby. Other neighbors followed, a steady stream of visitors curious to meet the new addition. Victoria found herself becoming part of the community in a way she had not been before. Motherhood was a shared experience, a common ground. The women traded advice and baby clothes, offered help and sympathy, included her in their conversations with an ease that had been missing when she was just Austin's strange mail-order bride. Summer brought long days of work and short nights of restless sleep, interrupted by Adam's need to nurse. Victoria was perpetually tired, but she did not complain. This was the life she had chosen, the life she wanted. Every time she looked at her son's face, every time Austin came in from the fields and swept them both into his arms, she felt gratitude flood through her. In July, nearly a year after she had arrived in Red Cloud, Victoria stood on the porch holding Adam and watched Austin ride back from checking the cattle. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. The prairie grass rippled in the breeze. Somewhere nearby, a meadowlark was singing. Austin dismounted and came to stand beside her, slipping his arm around her waist. "What are you thinking about? How different my life is from what it was, how lucky I am, how much I love you both." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "A year ago I had nothing. I was nobody, and now I have everything that matters. You were never nobody, you just had not found your place yet." Austin kissed the top of her head. "I am the lucky one. You took a chance on me, sight unseen. You trusted me with your life. And you gave me a life worth living." She turned to smile at him. "I would do it all again in a heartbeat. Every hard day, every moment of uncertainty, it was all worth it to end up here with you." Little Adam gurgled, reaching his chubby hands toward his father. Austin took him, lifting him high and making him laugh. Victoria watched them together, her heart so full it ached. This was what she had come west for, though she had not known it when she started. Not just a husband or a house, but a family, a place to belong, a love worth building a life around. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, they went inside together. Victoria lit the lanterns while Austin settled Adam in his cradle. They prepared a simple supper and ate together at the table, talking quietly about the day's work and tomorrow's plans. After the dishes were washed, they sat together in the rocking chair. Austin had moved into the bedroom, Victoria in his lap, and watched their son sleep. "I want to give you more," Austin said quietly. "More children, a bigger house, an easier life. You have already given me more than I ever dreamed of having. But yes, I would like more children. I want Adam to have siblings, to grow up with brothers and sisters the way I never did." She turned her head to look up at him. "As for the house and the easier life, those will come in time. We are young, we have years ahead of us." "Years," Austin repeated as if testing the word. "I like the sound of that. Years and years with you, watching our family grow, building something that will last." He tightened his arms around her. "I will work hard to make sure those years are good ones, Victoria. I promise you that. I know you will. And I will work just as hard. We are partners, remember? We do this together." Time moved forward as it always does. Adam took his first steps, spoke his first words, grew from a baby into a toddler. Victoria became pregnant again, delivered a daughter they named Abigail Rose on a cold February morning. Austin added 2 rooms to the house, expanding it gradually as money allowed. The cattle herd grew. The garden flourished. The homestead took shape around them, year by year, season by season. There were hard times, of course. A drought one summer that killed half the cattle and left them scrambling to survive. A winter so brutal that Victoria feared they would freeze before spring came. Illnesses, accidents, the endless grinding work of wresting a living from the unforgiving prairie. But they endured together, supporting each other through the worst of it, celebrating the good times with grateful hearts. When Adam was 4 and Abigail was 2, Victoria gave birth to twin boys, a surprise and a challenge. Austin hired a young man from town to help with the heavy work, giving him time to assist Victoria with the demanding task of caring for 4 children under the age of 5. The house rang with noise and laughter, sticky hands and muddy feet, the controlled chaos of a growing family. "I am outnumbered," Austin complained one evening, but he was smiling as he said it. 2-year-old Abigail asleep on his shoulder while the twins wrestled on the floor nearby. "You wanted a family," Victoria reminded him, stirring a pot of stew. "This is what family looks like. I am not complaining. I love every noisy, exhausting moment of it." He caught her eye across the room. "I love you for giving me all of this, for making my life full. I love you too, always." The children grew. Adam proved to be quick-minded and curious, constantly asking questions about how things worked. Abigail was fearless and stubborn, more interested in helping her father with the animals than in learning to sew or cook. The twins, Daniel and David, were inseparable, speaking their own private language and getting into twice the mischief of ordinary children. Victoria taught them to read using the Bible and Austin's small collection of books. She taught them their numbers, their letters, the basics of history and geography. When Adam turned 7, they enrolled him in the school in Red Cloud, and Victoria drove him to town 3 days a week in the wagon. Eventually, the other children followed, and the house grew quieter during the day, though no less busy. Austin expanded the cattle operation steadily, becoming one of the more prosperous ranchers in the area. He hired 2 permanent ranch hands and built a bunkhouse for them. He bought more land, adding to their original 40 acres. The small soddy where Victoria had first arrived was now just one part of a sprawling homestead, surrounded by outbuildings and corrals and fields. But despite the growth and the prosperity, Victoria never forgot where she had come from. She never forgot the feeling of being hungry and desperate and alone. When families passed through on their way west, she offered them meals and a place to sleep in the barn. When neighbors fell on hard times, she showed up with food and offers of help. She taught her children to be generous, to remember that everything they had could be lost, that fortune was fickle and kindness mattered. "You have a good heart," Austin told her once, watching her pack a basket of food for a widow in town whose husband had died in a farming accident. "Sometimes I think you give away too much. We have our own family to worry about. We have more than enough. That woman has nothing but 5 children and a failing farm. How can I not help?" Victoria tied a cloth over the basket. "You know what it is like to struggle. We both do. We have to help others when we can. You are right. I know you are right." He pulled her into his arms. "You make me a better man, Victoria Irving. You always have." Years passed in a blur of work and family and the changing seasons. Before Victoria quite realized how it had happened, Adam was 17 and courting a girl from town. Abigail was 15 and arguing about whether she could help with the spring cattle drive, and the twins were 13 and causing trouble at school. There was talk of another baby, a surprise at Victoria's age, and Austin fussed over her like she was made of spun glass. "I have done this 4 times before," she reminded him, laughing. "I think I know what to expect. You are not as young as you were, I worry. I am only 37. Women have babies at this age all the time. Stop treating me like an invalid." But secretly, she appreciated his concern. This pregnancy felt different, harder. She tired more easily, ached in places she had not ached before. When she delivered a healthy baby girl in the spring of 1897, 15 years after she had first arrived in Red Cloud, she knew it would be her last. They named her Emily Grace, and she had her father's green eyes and her mother's determination. "5 children," Austin said, holding Emily while their older children gathered around to meet their new sister. "We have made quite a family, you and I. We have." Victoria looked at the faces surrounding her, the children they had created together, the life they had built from nothing but hope and hard work. "I could not have imagined this when I stepped off that stagecoach 15 years ago. I was so scared, so uncertain, and you made me feel welcome. You made me feel like I could belong. You did belong, from the very first moment." Austin met her eyes over the baby's head. "Thank you, Victoria, for taking that chance, for building this life with me, for loving me. Thank you for being worth loving. For being the man I hoped you would be, and more." She smiled despite her exhaustion. "We did well, did not we? Better than well. We did magnificently." The years continued their steady march. Adam married his sweetheart and took over part of the ranch, building a house on the north section of the property. Abigail scandalized the town by declaring she had no interest in marriage and would rather work cattle than keep house. The twins eventually settled down and became reliable hands on the ranch. Emily grew from a baby into a bright, curious child who followed her father everywhere. Victoria and Austin grew older together, their hair turning gray, their bodies bearing the marks of decades of hard work. But the love between them never diminished. If anything, it grew stronger, deepened by shared history and mutual respect. One evening, when Emily was 10 and the other children were grown and gone from the house, Victoria and Austin sat together on the porch as they had done so many times before. The sunset was spectacular, all gold and orange and deep purple. The prairie stretched out before them, familiar and beloved. "Do you ever wish things had turned out differently?" Austin asked. "That you had married someone with more money and easier life?" "Never. Not once." Victoria took his hand, their fingers intertwining in a gesture as natural as breathing. "I married the right man. I chose the right life. Everything we have we built together. That means more than any amount of money or ease. I wish I could have given you more, though. You deserve more. Austin Irving, you gave me everything that matters. You gave me love and respect and partnership. You gave me 5 beautiful children and a home where I belong. You gave me a reason to hope when I had none left." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "That is worth more than all the gold in California." He kissed the top of her head. "I love you, Victoria, more than I can ever say. I love you too, always and forever." They sat in comfortable silence as the stars began to appear, one by one, in the darkening sky. Somewhere in the distance, cattle lowed. Closer to the house, Emily was singing in the kitchen as she cleaned up after supper. The sounds of home, of family, of a life well lived. Victoria thought back to that frightened young woman who had stepped off the stagecoach so many years ago, clutching a carpetbag and a fragile hope. If she could go back and tell her younger self what was coming, all the joy and struggle and love that lay ahead, would she believe it? Would she have the courage to take that first step toward Austin, to trust in his simple words? Hope is all we need. It had seemed like such a small thing to build a life on back then. But Austin had been right. Hope had been enough to start with. They had taken that small seed of hope and nurtured it, grown it into something beautiful and lasting. They had created a family, a home, a legacy that would outlive them both. As the last light faded from the sky, Austin helped Victoria to her feet. They went inside together, into the house they had filled with love and laughter, and prepared for bed. In the room they had shared for 25 years, beneath the star quilt that had belonged to Austin's mother, they held each other close. "No regrets," Austin whispered in the darkness. "Not a single one. You. Only that I did not meet you sooner. But then, maybe we needed to be exactly who we were, go through everything we went through to be ready for each other when the time came. I think you are right. Everything happened exactly as it should have. And here we are, exactly where we are supposed to be." They fell asleep in each other's arms as they had done thousands of times before, two people who had taken a chance on hope and found everything they had ever wanted. The years rolled on. Adam and his wife gave them grandchildren, 3 strapping boys who loved the ranch as much as their grandfather did. Abigail eventually married a man who respected her fierce independence and worked alongside her as an equal partner. The twins found their places in the world, one staying on the ranch, one moving to Omaha to work in the stockyards. Emily grew into a lovely young woman who became a teacher in Red Cloud. Victoria and Austin aged gracefully, their bodies slowing but their minds remaining sharp. They spent their days watching the grandchildren, offering advice to their children, enjoying the quieter pace of life as the younger generation took over the hard work of running the ranch. On a summer afternoon in 1910, nearly 30 years after Victoria had arrived in Red Cloud, she and Austin sat on the porch as the sun made its way toward the horizon. Austin's hair was completely white now, his face deeply lined. Victoria's hands were gnarled with arthritis, her back bent from decades of hard work. But they still held hands, still found comfort in each other's presence. 28 years, Victoria said softly. We have been married 28 years. It seems like yesterday and a lifetime ago all at once. Best 28 years of my life. Austin squeezed her hand gently. You know that, do not you? That I love you more now than I did the day we married. I do know that. And I love you more too. We have lived a full life together, Austin. A good life. The best life. He looked out at the prairie, at the land they had worked and loved for so long. When I think about what we have built here, all from that one decision to place an advertisement in a newspaper, it is remarkable. You took a chance on a stranger. I took a chance on hope, and somehow it all worked out better than we could have imagined. They sat quietly, watching the shadows lengthen across the land. Around them, their legacy lived and breathed, the ranch that would pass to their children and their children's children. The community they had helped build, the lives they had touched. It was more than Victoria had ever dreamed possible on that long-ago day when she stepped off the stagecoach with nothing but a worn carpetbag and a desperate hope for something better. When the sun finally dipped below the horizon, Austin stood and helped Victoria to her feet. They walked inside together, moving slowly now but still moving together, still partners in all things. In the house they had expanded and improved over the decades, they prepared for another evening, another night, another day of the life they had built together. That night, as they settled into bed, Victoria thought about all the moments that had brought them to this place. the fear and uncertainty of her arrival, Austin's kindness in taking her in, the slow growth of affection into love, the joy of children, the struggle of building a life, the satisfaction of seeing it all come together. Every moment, good and bad, had been worth it. "Thank you," she whispered to Austin in the darkness. "For what?" "For everything. For seeing past my threadbare dress and hollow cheeks, for giving me a home, for loving me, for building this life with me. Thank you for coming, for staying, for making me happier than I ever thought possible." His arms tightened around her. "I would do it all again, exactly the same way, if it meant ending up here with you. So would I. Every time I would choose you, I would choose this life." They drifted off to sleep together, two souls who had found each other across the vast distance and uncertainty, who had built something lasting out of hope and hard work and love. The ranch continued to thrive under the stewardship of their children. Adam proved to be as capable a rancher as his father, and his sons were already showing the same aptitude. Abigail and her husband established a successful horse breeding operation on an adjoining property. The twins had their own families and their own lives, but they came home often, bringing their children to learn from their grandparents. Victoria took great joy in her grandchildren, teaching them to raid and cook and garden, telling them stories of the old days, of what it had been like when the prairie was wilder and the settlements fewer. She wanted them to understand where they came from, the sacrifices that had been made to give them the lives they had. Austin taught the grandsons to rope and ride, to judge cattle and horseflesh, to read the weather and respect the land. He was patient with them in a way he had not always been with his own children, having learned through the years that gentleness was often more effective than severity. On Victoria's 60th birthday in 1920, the whole family gathered for a celebration. The house was full to bursting with children and grandchildren, and the noise was tremendous. They had a feast with all of Victoria's favorite foods, and afterward, everyone gathered on the porch to watch the sunset. Adam stood and raised his glass. "To my mother, who came to Nebraska with nothing but hope, and who has given us all so much. Thank you, Ma, for everything you have done, everything you are. We love you." The others echoed the sentiment, and Victoria felt tears prick her eyes. She looked around at all the faces, this family she had helped create, and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. "Thank you all," she said, when she could trust her voice. "You have made my life richer than I ever imagined possible. I came west looking for a home, and I found so much more. I found love, purpose, belonging. I found a family. You are my greatest joy and my proudest accomplishment." Austin put his arm around her shoulders. "We did this together, Victoria and I. We built this family, this ranch, this life, and we could not have done it without hope, without trusting in each other and in the future." He smiled down at his wife. "I told you that first day that hope was all we needed. I think I was right." "You were right," Victoria agreed, leaning into him. "Hope was enough to start with. Love did the rest." As the sun set on another day, on another year, on a life full of memories and meaning, Victoria and Austin sat surrounded by the family they had created, the legacy they would leave behind. It had not been an easy journey. There had been hardship and loss along the way, struggles and setbacks. But they had faced it all together, partners in the truest sense. That night, after everyone had gone home or settled in for sleep, Victoria and Austin lay in their bed and talked quietly about the day. "It was a good party," Austin said. "Everyone seemed to enjoy themselves. It was wonderful." "I am blessed beyond measure." Victoria paused. "Austin, do you think we have done right by them? The children and grandchildren. Have we taught them what they need to know?" "I think we have done the best we could. We have taught them to work hard, to be honest, to treat people fairly." We have shown them what love looks like, what commitment means. They will make their own choices, their own mistakes, but they have a solid foundation to build on. That is all we can give them. You are a wise man, Austin Irving. I have had a good teacher. You have taught me so much about kindness and generosity and perseverance. I am a better man because of you. And I am a better woman because of you. We have been good for each other. The best. They fell silent, content in each other's presence. Outside, the prairie night was alive with sound. Crickets chirping, cattle settling, the distant call of an owl. The same sounds they had fallen asleep to for nearly 40 years. The soundtrack of their life together. Victoria thought about the girl she had been, desperate and afraid, stepping off that stagecoach into an uncertain future. If she could speak to that girl now, what would she say? That the fear would pass. That the uncertainty would resolve itself into something beautiful. That the man waiting for her with his simple faith and hope would become the greatest love of her life. She would tell her younger self to be brave. To take the leap. To trust in the possibility of happiness even when it seemed impossible. Because sometimes, against all odds, hope was enough. Sometimes it led you exactly where you needed to be. Austin's breathing had deepened into sleep, but Victoria lay awake a while longer, savoring the peace of this moment. She had lived a long life, a full life, a life worth living. She had loved deeply and been loved in return. She had raised children who would carry on after her, who would tell their own children about the grandmother who had come west as a mail-order bride and found everything she had ever wanted. It was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything. Eventually, she too drifted off to sleep, safe and warm in the arms of the man who had promised her that hope was all they needed, and who had spent nearly 4 decades proving it true. The seasons continued their endless cycle. Spring brought new calves and the hard work of branding and planting. Summer meant long days in the heat, tending crops and cattle. Fall brought harvest and preparation for winter. Winter meant hunkering down against the cold, waiting for spring to come again. The rhythm of ranch life continued, year after year, as constant as the stars. Victoria and Austin grew older still, their movements slower, their energy less. But they were still partners, still working together in their own way. Victoria could no longer do the heavy work of running a household, but she could still cook and sew and tend her small garden. Austin could not ride all day anymore, but he could still oversee the ranch operations and make the important decisions. Their children took on more and more of the responsibility, but they were respectful, always seeking their parents' advice, always making sure Victoria and Austin felt valued and included. It was a good way to age, surrounded by family, still useful, still loved. One evening in early spring of 1925, Austin complained of feeling tired. He went to bed earlier than usual and Victoria went with him, worried by the grayness of his complexion. In the night, he woke with pains in his chest. Victoria called for Adam, who rode to town for the doctor, but by the time the doctor arrived, Austin was gone. He died in Victoria's arms, his last words a whispered, "I love you." She held him and cried, devastated by the loss of the man who had been her partner for 43 years. The man who had given her everything. The man who had proven that hope was enough, that love could grow from the simplest beginnings into something vast and enduring. The funeral was large, attended by people from all over the county. Austin Irving had been respected, admired, loved. The preacher spoke of his integrity, his hard work, his devotion to his family. But Victoria barely heard the words. She sat in the front pew, surrounded by her children and grandchildren, and felt the terrible weight of his absence. In the days and weeks that followed, Victoria moved through her grief one moment at a time. Her children wanted her to come live with one of them, but she refused. This house, this ranch, it was her home. It was where she and Austin had built their life together. She would not leave it now. She settled into a new rhythm, a solitary one. She rose each morning and made her breakfast. She tended her garden, did her small chores, sat on the porch and watched the prairie. Her children visited often, bringing the grandchildren, filling the house with life and noise. But when they left, the silence was profound. At night, lying alone in the bed she had shared with Austin for so long, Victoria talked to him. She told him about her day, about the children, about the small happenings on the ranch. Sometimes she imagined she could feel his presence, a warmth in the air, a sense of comfort. She knew it was probably just wishful thinking, but she allowed herself the comfort anyway. Time passed. A year, then two. Victoria grew frailer, her body finally giving in to the accumulation of years and hard work. But her mind stayed sharp, and her spirit remained strong. She had lived a good life. She had loved and been loved. She had built something that would last beyond her own life. She was ready, when the time came, to let go. On a warm summer evening in 1927, 45 years after she had first arrived in Red Cloud, Victoria sat on the porch and watched the sun set one last time. The prairie was gold in the fading light, beautiful and eternal. Around her, she could feel the presence of everyone she had loved. Austin most of all, but also her children, her grandchildren, all the people who had made her life meaningful. That night, she went to sleep and did not wake. She died peacefully, in the house she had made a home, in the bed she had shared with the love of her life. She was 67 years old. At her funeral, Adam stood and spoke about his mother, about her courage in coming west alone, about her strength in building a life from nothing, about her kindness and generosity and love, about the legacy she left behind, not just in the ranch but in the family she had created, the values she had instilled. "My mother came to Nebraska with nothing but hope," Adam said, his voice breaking slightly. "And my father told her that hope was all they needed. They built a life on that hope, a family, a legacy. They showed all of us what love looks like, what commitment means, what can be accomplished when two people work together toward a common goal. We will miss her terribly. But we will honor her by living the values she taught us, by carrying on what she and my father built together." They buried Victoria next to Austin in the small cemetery outside Red Cloud. A simple stone marked the grave, with both their names and the dates of their lives. But their true monument was the ranch that still thrived, the children and grandchildren who carried their names and their values, the story that would be told and retold for generations. The story of a mail-order bride who came with nothing but hope, and a cowboy who said hope was all they needed. The story of two people who took a chance on each other and built a life beyond their wildest dreams. The story of love that grew from the simplest beginnings into something vast and enduring, a testament to the power of hope, hard work, and unwavering commitment. Years later, when Victoria and Austin's great-grandchildren played in the yard of the old homestead, now expanded and modernized but still recognizably the same, someone would inevitably ask about the couple in the old photograph hanging in the parlor. The stern-faced man and the woman with the gentle smile, standing together in front of the original two-room house, and whoever was asked would tell the story. About how Victoria came west on a stagecoach with nothing but a carpetbag and hope. About how Austin met her with an open heart and a simple faith that hope was enough. About how they built a life together, through hardship and joy, through struggle and triumph, through all the years that made up a lifetime. About how they loved each other, truly and deeply, until the very end. About how their love created a legacy that lasted long after they were gone. About how sometimes, when you take a chance on hope, when you trust in the possibility of happiness, when you commit to building something with another person, you can create something beautiful and lasting. About how hope, in the end, really was all they needed, because everything else, all the love and family and meaning that filled their lives, grew from that single seed of hope planted on a dusty street in Red Cloud, Nebraska, on a summer day in 1882. And that was a story worth telling, worth remembering, worth passing down through the generations. A story of the American West, of pioneers and homesteaders, of hard work and determination. But most of all, a story of love. Simple, honest, enduring love. The kind of love that built a nation, one family at a time. The kind of love that proved, beyond any doubt, that hope was indeed all they needed. Everything else followed naturally, inevitably, beautifully, from that single brave decision to believe in the possibility of happiness, to trust in each other, to build a life together from nothing but hope and love and unwavering commitment. It was, in the end, the greatest gift Victoria and Austin gave to each other and to all who came after them. The knowledge that love, real love, was possible, was worth fighting for, was worth building a life around. That two strangers could become partners, partners could become lovers, and lovers could create a legacy that would outlast them by generations. That was their story, and it was a good one, worth every moment they lived it.